На трибунах аллеют знамена, облака в поднебесье плывут. На зеленом ковре стадиона разноцветные майки цветут.
Hello and welcome back to a special episode of the RFN Podcast. In our fourth European Club Preview special, I'm your host, James Nichols, as always. And this week I'm also joined by Rob van Elewout of the Kein Geloel Podcast to discuss things all Feyenoord ahead of their tie in Moscow with CSKA. So, good afternoon, Rob.
Good afternoon, James. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Well, I say I'm good, but after we suffered two teams getting knocked out of Europe last night, it could have been better, but tonight, Loco playing, they're quite optimistic about Loco's chances for once, despite the group. And then, of course, CSKA back again.
Yeah.
Now, of course, CSKA are currently top of the RPL and have been pretty good of late in the domestic form. They've only lost one game in 10, and that one game was, of course, last time out against Feyenoord at Rotterdam. Now, Feyenoord won 3-1, which seems quite a glamorous and an easy win, but I'm not quite sure if it was. I think it was a little bit closer than the scoreline suggests. So what are your thoughts on the first leg and how the game went?
I think you're right. It could be a lot closer than 3-1. But to be honest, it was maybe it was our best performance this season so far. I really didn't expect to win because CSKA, as what you said, is on top of the Russian league. And we were not doing that great in Europe. So yeah, I was surprised to win from you guys. And I thought in the first 10 minutes or so, my feelings were quite different than after 90 minutes. Because in the first 10 minutes, I thought, oh, this is going to be really difficult. But we played well. And I think what I said, it was the best performance so far.
Yeah. No. I must admit, I was a little bit afraid of Feyenoord, if that's the right word, before when the group stages were announced.
Yeah.
But I was taken aback by the result against Wolfsberger. Now, obviously, 3 of those goals were penalties.
Oh,
but,
right. Yeah.
but what happened in that game? How did they kind of fall apart so much?
It's easy to blame the referee for this one. It's the most easy out way for an excuse. But I think he played a really big part in that match. We were awful to begin with. We didn't deserve anything but a draw at top. We didn't deserve to win. But there were 3 penalties, and at least 2 of them were quite ridiculous, to be honest. So yeah, it was a crazy match, and I was really, really angry. We experienced a match like this in, I think it was 2015 against AS Roma in the last 32 in the Europa League, and it really reminded me of that game. We were stolen from a draw. It was awful, but we were playing really bad. So I was mad. Yeah.
See, up until that last game, I mean, like you say, you mentioned the penalties and possibly blaming the referee in the Wolfsberger game.
Yeah.
In the Feyenoord-CSKA game, of course, 2 of the goals were marginally offside, but regardless of that, I don't think CSKA really showed enough attacking threat and enough star quality at either end of the pitch. Yes, one of the guys was in an offside position, but when he crosses the ball in, there's just not a defender for miles. Like, you can't be defending like that at this level and get away with it. And that's kind of been CSKA's issue this season in Europe. The build-up play has been brilliant up until the final third.
Yeah.
And that's really CSKA under Viktor Goncharenko. They pass it, they have their plan A. But if anyone sits backs to the wall against them, or they come up against, in Feyenoord's case, a more elite defence, a stronger defence, then the players do really tend to struggle to break the final line down. We've played Chidera Ajuke up top.
Yeah.
We've played Shalov up top, Adolfo Gajic, Arno Sigurdsson, all of them playing that central striking role, and none of them have really had that much of an impact. Now, Gajic did score, but it was a bit of a tame shot, and aside from that, I thought he was really dreadful in that game.
Yeah.
And that's, when I look at Feyenoord's side, they do seem to have a little bit more star quality than CSKA's, apart from maybe Vlasic, who's the best player in Russia by quite some distance at the moment.
Yeah, exactly.
But domestically, Feyenoord, how have you been performing in their Eredivisie?
So far, we're doing okay, I think. In the first few matches, we drawn a lot of matches we should have won. So I think at the end we should have like 3 or 4 points more than we do have now. But we're in third position, which is acceptable for now. We really wanted to play for the championship. I think it's going to be difficult, to be fair. Although we have a long road to go, but I think that's not gonna happen. But third place is okay, and sometimes we play very good football. But most of the times I'm a little bit disappointed. But we I should say it like this: it's hard to lose against us, to win from us. I think that's our main quality. We don't play beautiful football that much, but we are a team, and that's a good thing, with some good defenders and one star in the front, which is Steven Berghuis, our number 10. He didn't score at CSKA, I think, but he's our star player, and so we have a good mix. We have a good mix of players, but we normally we score a 7 almost every game, or a 6, but it's never a 9. You know what I mean? So
yeah, definitely.
It's hard to win from a very big team. So that's why I was surprised to see us play that well against CSKA. But in the competition, we're doing okay. Our last game was good, actually. We came behind after a few minutes, and after 15 minutes we had a red card. So we played with 10 men, but we won 3-1. So that's good. Yeah, we're doing okay. Like, I give it a 6.5.
Yeah, Berghuis I thought I was really impressed by him in the last game. I thought I'm sure he set up Paps for the first goal, if I remember rightly. But you can tell he's got that star quality that's just the level above a lot of what we're seeing on the pitch.
Yeah, exactly.
As I mentioned, CSKA themselves are actually top of the RPL, and they started off quite poorly, but are really getting a very solid run together, and a lot of that is basically Nicola Vlasic is in outstanding form this season. He's carrying the team almost single-handedly at times, to be honest. The big performance was the recent derby win against Spartak, the 1-3-1.
That counts, I think.
Yeah, massively. When you got a player like that, then you're in any game really at this level, where it's quite an evenly matched group. That sort of player can really change a game to your favour.
Yeah.
But so, like I said before, CSKA, even domestically, they do have issues breaking teams down. They've drawn with Ufa, who are bottom of the table in Russia, and really having a terrible season. And they pack their defence. And I understand what you meant about Feyenoord. It's kind of like Feyenoord won't cause themselves to lose, but the team they're playing, you have to go out and beat them.
Yeah.
And I do worry about that from CSKA's perspective. If Vlasic maybe isn't on form, or if, because you're playing such good opposition, if it's just him on form on his own, then what happens is what happened last week, where they just weren't good enough for large swathes, to be honest. Once again, really struggling to break teams down.
Yeah.
And even then, it was CSKA, I think, only had 4 shots on target throughout the whole of the 90 minutes, which is the worst at all and out of the 3. And Chidera Ejuke, the Nigerian winger, was signed from Herenveen, of course. You'll probably know quite well.
Yeah, we know him. Yeah,
he's a very hit and miss player, where sometimes he's lightning and really his directness really drags CSKA out in the final third, and his dribbling ability is brilliant. But then he's a little bit very hit and miss in the final third. I think he completed more dribbles in 45 minutes against Dinamo Zagreb than any other player in Europe had at that point, but didn't make a single key pass, didn't have a single cross into the box, nor an assist or shot on goal or anything.
Yeah. We know him, of course, from Heerenveen, what you said. And we talked about getting him to Feyenoord, but he was way too expensive for us. I think CSKA paid around 12 million euros or something for him.
Yeah.
We didn't have that. We are not that rich. But that's his problem. Exactly what you're saying. He's very dangerous. I think the wing backs are going back if he comes through. But the final pass or hitting a goal is still difficult for him. But it's an attractive player to watch. I think that's true. But he should learn a lot, I think, and hopefully he won't show it on Thursday, because then we're screwed.
Yeah, and CSKA's problem is that really where, apart from Vlasic, of course, they don't have that real final star quality, and it's because most of the squad are really still developing. It's the youngest squad in Russia by quite some distance, and I think it's the second youngest in the Europa League right now. They've got a lot of promise, and a lot of them are really only developing that promise into game by game delivering. Like Ivan Obliakov came from Ufa with Goncharenko, and he's a very, very tidy young midfielder.
Yeah.
And it's only this season that he's really coming into his own, and you can see that he is the future of CSKA's midfield and the national team's midfield. He's been that good for them. He's probably been the best player behind Vlasic.
Yeah.
Of course, Feyenoord are now bossed by the former Zenit man, Dick Advocaat.
Yeah.
So how is Advocaat faring, and what sort of style of play does he implement upon the side? Is it very typically Advocaat, where it's defense first and then figure out the rest from there?
Yeah, I think it is. That's what he brought when he came last year in, I think it was October 2019. We had Jaap Stam, the great defender of the Netherlands in the late 90s and 2000s. You know him, I think.
Yeah, of course, definitely.
Jaap Stam really wanted to play some real unrealistic football, like high pressure. We didn't have the squad for that style of play. Very slow defenders, so it was impossible to play high pressure. And Dick Advocaat just brought a lot of, I think, realism. Is that a good word?
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, that's what he brought to us, and he keeps doing that. I think sometimes he is a little bit too conservative. We played in the Europa League. We played 0-0 against Dinamo Zagreb away, and I really think with some attacking changes, we could have won that game. But Dick thought after 60 or 70 minutes, all right, 0-0 is enough. We're happy about this, and let's get back to Holland with 1 point, where we all as fans thought, well, this was the one to get 3 points out of Croatia.
Yeah.
And that happens a little bit too much, in my opinion. So that's sometimes is frustrating, but in interviews, he's a happy man. He gave us some pride back. I think that's a good word.
Yeah.
And he's by far the most charming coach at top 3 in Holland. So yeah.
It's very similar to what, obviously, as our listeners know, I'm a Sunderland fan, and it's very similar to what he did with us, where he galvanised the squad, stopped us trying to play too expansive football, kind of brought us back to basics.
Yeah.
And that really, it kept us up more than anything, first from the real torrid time and towards the end of Gus Poyet's reign.
Yeah.
And then, like you mentioned, he's a very charismatic man. You don't expect it when you first come in, and you hear these rumours, anyway, in the English lexicon anyway, we hear these rumours of someone like Advocaat being like the little general, being like take nothing, but he was really quite charismatic and funny, and surprisingly so as well, and very emotional.
Very emotional, yeah.
When we stayed up final game of the season with a very typically Advocaat brilliant 0-0 defensive performance away to Arsenal, him and his assistant Bert van Lingen, with decades experience between them, were crying their eyes out on the side of the pitch, because that's just what football means to them, I suppose. But CSKA also drew 0-0 with Dinamo Zagreb, but it was at home, unfortunately for them.
Yeah.
But it was a totally different game. I think it was even on possession, really, but territorially, CSKA spent the majority of the game in Dinamo's half and with attack after attack, and I think they had like 20 odd shots on goal in the end, and
All right.
and they just couldn't find the back of the net, which is a reoccurring theme for CSKA and, to be fair, Russian clubs in general in Europe this season. And that's when they had Chalov up front, and he was brought off for Gaich.
Yeah.
The next game, of course, Gaich started up front and Chalov came on, and then Sigurdsson started against Feyenoord.
Yeah.
But the big issue with Goncharenko and CSKA in general is that they don't really have a plan B. Their plan A is overload the flanks through Mario Fernandez and Bakhtiar Zinutanov attacking very high down either side.
Yeah.
Kachayev and Ajuke or whoever it is on the opposite wing cut inside, and then they continue like that and recycle play out wide, cut into the flank, cut into the channels, try and control territory around the opposition box. And then if there is a packed defence like Dinamo's, like Wolfsberger's, and then like Feyenoord's, which wasn't as packed but just brimming with real steely determination. Like I think those Feyenoord defenders are just like really consistent. Like Spahic, we all know very well from his time at Krasnodar.
Yeah.
And Senesi scored an own goal, but there's not much you could do about that. They're just very consistently solid. And CSKA struggle. And then they have Gaich, who's a target man and totally different to the rest.
Yeah.
But even when they bring Gaich on, they don't really go for a plan B and try and play a bit more direct to try and force the defenders into doing something differently. It's just the same every time. Yeah. So they're kind of a little bit like chalk and cheese, but neither the best going forwards, if that's fair to say.
Yeah, I think I know what you mean. Yeah, and I think that's true.
You kind of alluded to who I think you might say here anyway, but who would be Feyenoord's danger men for the tie?
Well, of course, we have one star player, and that's Steven Berghuis. He's our number 10, a right winger. He has a great left foot. He's a brilliant player. I think he's too good for Feyenoord, but we're thanking the Lord every day. He's still playing with us. He's our captain as well, and he's a really good captain, although some people don't think so. He really has a good mentality, and he also has an eye and a feeling for the other players. If they are unhappy or whatever, he pushes them up, and so yeah, that's a star player. But you mentioned Senesi. Marco Senesi is our Argentinian defender. I think he's brilliant. He scored an own goal against CSKA, but last Sunday, and maybe if your listeners want to watch that goal, you have to type in Marco Senesi goal, and I think it's the first hit on YouTube. He really scored a magnificent volley just outside the 16 meters. It couldn't hit that one better. And a few weeks before, he had a bicycle kick, also scored. He's a very complete defender, and so maybe some danger in corners or something like that could happen from him. And hopefully our striker, Nikolai Jurgensen, is fit enough to play. He's injured most of the time, last 2 or 3 years. In the year we became champion in 2017, he scored 22 or 21 goals. He came from Copenhagen. And we really want to see that form again from him. So hopefully he will do that on Thursday, but maybe it's too early.
Yeah, may not be back in time. Now, from CSKA's point of view, of course, the danger man is without a shadow of a doubt Nicola Vlasic. Yep. He's, as I mentioned earlier, I can't really put in too many words, just too many superlatives, just how really highly I rate this lad, and I think he will make his way to the top of the game, following in the footsteps of Alexei Miranchuk from Russia and so on. And he's just taken the league and CSKA by storm since his arrival from Everton. And the more he plays, the less. When he first came, he was very effective, but it was more so just breaking into the box, getting the odd goal and assist, and now he's really dictating play from his number 10's point of view. He's coming short for everything, going long. He's a set piece specialist. He scores from anywhere inside the box, outside the box. He creates now, and CSKA basically needs him to be on form to get anything from the game. The other big players are actually going to miss the game, we think anyway. And Konstantin Kachayev, he picked up a knee injury, and Viktor Goncharенко confirmed that he will miss the match, and he's been in very good form this season. Mario Fernandez down the right flank is the best right back in Russia by quite some distance, and most of CSKA's good play comes from him overloading the lateral with linking in with Kachayev, Vlasic, and then sometimes Alan Dzagoev, who, like Jurgensen, has been injured constantly, what feels like now for almost a decade.
But Dzagoev is a big name, right? In Russia.
Yeah, huge name.
He's played European or World Cups, I think, also.
Yeah, definitely. He played in 2018. He really came into the international stage in 2008 and 2010 as a young and exciting winger, and then played in just about has played in every major tournament Russia have been in. But his injuries have really set him back year in, year out, especially of late, where he's been just bit part games every 5 or 10 minutes here, and then he's out for a game. He's actually out for this game because he's got COVID, which is of course not injury related, but he will miss the match. Mario Fernandez is a massive doubt as well, due to injury. He's facing a late fitness test. So not the best. I mean, injury news for CSKA is that Viktor Varsin's back, who, if he plays, is probably good news for Feyenoord, because he's the most mistake-prone defender I've ever seen in my life. He's truly terrible.
Oh, really?
So, awful, which is worse news than Kachayev and Dzagoev being out. But yeah,
you talk about Russian defenders now. What was his name again?
Viktor Varsin.
Varsin, all right. Spajic. How does he? What's your opinion of Spajic in Russia?
I must admit, he's probably CSKA's, one of Krasnodar's best defenders over the last couple of years, and it was really surprising when he left, and especially because they haven't adequately replaced him whatsoever. Kayo was mistake-ridden, to be fair to him. Yegor Sorokin, who was the signing to replace Spajic, hasn't really kicked on from his early promise at Rubin Kazan. And then, of course, Martinovic is 35 now. He's just far too old. And then Krasnodar's biggest issues in the Champions League this season have been shooting themselves in the foot, be it awful goalkeeping or just ridiculous errors, awful penalties to give away, real glaring mistakes that you just can't afford to make at that level. And the limelight has really come down onto Sergei Galetsky, the owner, and Murat Musayev, the manager, for the decision to A, get rid of Spajic, and then B, not replace him adequately enough whatsoever, because Spajic was definitely one of the first choice defenders alongside Martinovic for Krasnodar, and a very highly rated as well.
Yeah, we're happy with him, I have to say. He was out. I don't know if he's back on Thursday again. I think he had, well, I may not say it right, but I thought he had COVID as well. So I think he'll be back now, just in time. Yeah, he gave us some rest. He's not the best, not the best footballer, maybe, but he's a stable defender. I think that's good.
Yeah, and that was generally the reason why he was dropped from Krasnodar's side and why he was sold, because the way Krasnodar play football, they want the defenders to be footballers first, as well as solid defenders. And Kayo was very, very good at progressing the ball out from defence. So Spajic, his job was basically just to get the ball and give it to the midfielders, and they wanted more from that role. The problem with doing that is that Kayo was just nowhere near as good with his back to goal, and his concentration levels and positioning aren't the best. And for me, that's the number one job of a defender, no matter how good they are on the ball.
Yeah. It makes sense. But we're happy with him. It's a decent defender.
Yeah, it's good to hear that he's doing well. But speaking of doing well, what are your long-term expectations for Feyenoord in the Europa League? I presume, of course, qualification to the next round is the main one right now.
Yeah, I'm maybe in our group, in our podcast, I'm the most optimistic man. So I think we have a chance also Thursday, but also in general. I think it's 6 years ago now. We've managed to proceed to the last 32. So we really need that to do it, to be one or number two in this group. I think we deserve it as well, but it's still going to be difficult because this group is so close. Everything can happen. You're down by 2 points, CSKA, but you still have every chance to proceed. So there's nothing really to. I really have no idea what's going to happen. Thursday, we have a possibility if there's going to be a miracle Thursday. You know why?
Why's that?
If we win in Russia, it's going to be our first away win in 6 years in Europe. We have lost or drawn all of our matches in 6 years away. So that's terrible. And that's why I was so, what I told you about Dinamo Zagreb away. We really could have won that one. But just Advocaat being a little bit too happy with a draw, I think we've could have won over there. So that's a pity. But maybe it happens Thursday. It's gonna get closer anyhow. The first win in 6 years. It's around the corner, I hope.
It's funny that you mentioned that about the long run, but CSKA themselves have actually only won one game in the last 10 at home in the European football, and that was ironically against Real Madrid when they did the double over Real.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and still did the double over Real and still managed to finish fourth in the group, which is pretty unique to be fair.
Crazy.
But CSKA themselves haven't been doing too great in Europe in general of late. They finished last in the group in the Champions League in 2015-16, 2017, and then the last 2 years. The one aberration to that is they finished third in the Champions League group stage in 2017-18.
Yeah.
And then got through to the quarter-final of the Europa League, in which they lost 6-3 on aggregate to Arsenal. So that's the only like Feyenoord time that they really progressed far in European competition for some time.
Yeah.
Of course, they won it in 2005, which was the first ever European trophy under famous, legendary manager Valeri Gudzayev. But to be frank, my expectations for CSKA in the Europa League this year is getting out of the group. When the group draw was made, I must admit my initial thoughts were Feyenoord first, CSKA second.
Already Feyenoord first?
Yeah, to be honest, yeah. But I am, like you said, you're the most optimistic, and Russian football news, I'm probably the most pessimistic.
Oh, really? Why do you thought Feyenoord was going to be first? It's still possible, but why did you thought that in advance?
It's just look at the quality of the side throughout. The Russian teams have a tendency to look good on paper, but then when it comes to it, choke at the worst of times, which this season really is showing. We'll concede last-minute goals, goals through terrible mistakes, missing sitters. Krasnodar have led and went behind. CSKA have been pretty woeful in front of goal, and at this stage, getting out of this group stage and just getting into European football beyond Christmas would be quite a good result for them. Get a little bit more income coming in.
Yep.
But yeah, that's it really. I mean, I must admit I am, as our listeners know quite well, I am a Spartak fan, which is CSKA's big rivals. Me going pessimistic on CSKA is probably quite expected. But apart from Vlasic and Mario Fernandes, I'm not quite sure if they have the star quality to really go far in Europe anymore. And I don't think Russian sides in general do. There's lots of domestic issues, such as the foreigner limits, of which we have to have only eight foreigners in the squad.
Yeah.
Limits all of the teams in Europe, because you've got your first team playing in Europe, and then you can't add to that. You can't get more in, because everyone you have to bring in at this point, you have to get one out, and then playing so many games at the weekend, you're just playing your second team, and then they really go in long runs of quite bad results. So there's just lots of issues plaguing the Russian game at the moment, and then it's all kind of coming to a head with how badly the national team are performing, how badly the teams in general are performing. Dynamo Moscow lost in the qualification for the Europa League. Rostov lost in qualification. Dynamo Moscow lost against Lokomotiv Tbilisi, which is just unheard of. And then not a single one of our group stage sides in any competition have picked up a win yet. So long-term expectations at best, just get out the group stages.
Yeah.
Predictions for the game on Thursday. Like I say, I am pessimistic, so I'm just going to go boring 0-0. I fear that CSKA, unless Vlasic has turned the brilliance on, without some key players, just might not be able to break Feyenoord down.
That would be good news, actually. What you say about Russian football clubs, they have the ability to choke at the worst time possible. Unfortunately, that counts for Feyenoord as well. So I'm optimistic, but it's more based on hope than on expectations. So my hope is we will win. My expectation, I think we will draw again. And I hope to see some goals. So let's say 1-1. That's what I think.
Nice. Right. Well, thank you for joining me today, Rob. It's been a nice little conversation to hear about both sides. And
thank you.
And for any Dutch speakers who are out there, make sure to go listen to Kein Geloel Podcast.
Yeah.
And Rob, where can everybody find yourself and your work online?
Everybody can find our podcast at soundcloud.com/Kein Geloel. It's KAINGELOEL. Maybe you have to listen to this again because I was going too fast. Or keingeloel.nl, which stands for Netherlands, of course. So there you can find us. We can find your podcast, I think, if we see your Twitter account, Russian Football News, right?
Yeah. As usual, ours is all the same places. It's at Russ Football News. Podcasts on SoundCloud, Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and so on. Any personal Twitter accounts just for yourself, or the Kein Geloel one at all?
On Twitter. Yeah, you can follow Kein Geloel Pod from podcast, POD. Or my Twitter you can follow as well. I'm not that active, to be honest. I retweet a lot, but that's it. You can see Rob van Elewout, and I hope you spell my name somewhere in a text or whatever. That's my Twitter account as well, just my full name. Can I ask you one question, James, for our listeners? I'm curious about one thing. You're a fan of Russian football, especially from Spartak, but you're an Englishman. How come?
Yeah, I get this quite a lot. We kind of at RFN, one of our writers, Ilya, did an interview with a lot of our writers, and basically asking why follow Russian football when it's a bit crazy and as the Russians themselves say, a bit shit. When you're English. And from my perspective, anyway, I studied Russian and Soviet history in my master's degree.
Oh wow!
And basically just wanted to make something useful out of a master's degree in 2020, because there's not much usefulness from a master's in history anyway.
Yeah.
And then from there, it's just watching Spartak in the Champions League as a child in the 90s, and really kind of being surprised by who are this team from this country that I've never really heard of, and they've just beaten some of the biggest English sides. Why is this? And then followed on from there. And most of our writers are the same, but in this interview that Ilya did, one of the favourite things that I've ever heard from the site is one guy said that we do more for Russian football than the Russian Football Union does. And then another fellow replied that with that they're all crazy sadists, which is both. The second one's absolutely true.
Funny. Oh, great.
Yeah,
right.
so
That's so you studied Russian. Can you maybe say good luck on Thursday in Russian for us?
Oh no, it wasn't. I didn't study the language. I studied the history.
The language. Okay.
Yeah, as the listeners know, my own Russian is absolutely horrendous.
Oh, okay. So
I always get jibes off the other guys in our various RFN chats for my awful pronunciations, and then the listeners all go like, yeah, it's terrible.
All right. Okay, let's not do that then.
So, Rob, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so everyone else, guys, keep an eye out for the next episode of the RFN podcast, and that'll be out later on this week. We'll be reviewing all of the European action and having a look at the upcoming games in the RPL. Goodbye for now.
Идет футбольный матч, летит над полем мяч. Веди его, беги, точнее его ударь. Но мяч берет с ноги решительный вратарь. Не напрасно футбольное поле самых ловких и смелых влечет. Здесь нужны тренировка и воля, быстрота, увлечение, расчет.